Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and it's Tuesday, which means it's time for our weekly tier list Tuesday. And the big theme to start this season is, of course, the next generation of young superstars really breaking out. Guys like Bedard, Celebrini, Carlson, and a bunch of other guys that I could go through. And I thought for this tier list Tuesday, we can look at how the NHL will look in 5 years from now when some of these young stars are truly within their prime. So here's our tier list. We got the top tier contenders. This is like the 6 or 7 teams that are between like 8-1 and 15-1 to win the Stanley Cup in a given year. Safe playoff team. That's kind of like the Winnipeg Jets of recent memory and like the LA Kings before this season. They'll probably be in the playoffs. Outside shot to end up winning a Stanley Cup, but they'll be in the Stanley Cup playoffs, battling for a playoff spot. They'll either be a wild card team or just barely miss, below average, or entering a rebuild. Either like they just don't really have the young talent right now, or they're getting old, and by the time that it comes November of 2030, they're kind of entering this rebuild. And then deep in a rebuild, these are the teams that are probably going to be entering a rebuild in like 3 years, and come 2030, they'll be pretty deep in the thick of it. So let's go through this, and I want you to come back to this video in 5 years from now and see how I do. The Anaheim Ducks, you got to go a top-tier contender. What are they? First in the Pacific Division right now, and it's mainly off the back of their young core outside of like Jacob Truman, Kreider playing insane. You got Carlson solidifying himself as their franchise center. Cutter Gauthier has like 12 goals. Beckett Seneca, 19 years old, is killing it. McTavish has been very good. And Dahl, especially, he has proved that he's their franchise guy. Going forward, I think they're going to enter like true contendership probably in like 2 to 3 years. So by the 2030, 2031 season, they'll definitely be a cup or bust kind of team. The Colorado Avalanche, as long as they have Makar and McKinnon, I think even then when McKinnon's, 34 years old, Makar's 32 years old, they should still be a safe playoff team. I'm not worried about those guys aging. The Natrushkins, the Landeskog's, the Brock Nelsons, the Devon Tazes, like those guys will be starting to fall out of their prime. So I'm not sure if they're going to be a top tier contender. But yeah, as long as you can give those two still superstars adequate talent around them, they should still be a playoff team. The Calgary Flames, I'm going to go with battling for a playoff spot. I think that they need to commit to the rebuild the next 2 seasons. But in 2030, I think that they could be coming out of that and somewhat battling for a playoff spot if they get a top 5 pick this year, get an impact forward with Zane Parekh, with Dustin Wolf, with some of their prospects that I like. They'll be emerging from a rebuild, but they won't be a safe playoff team or like a top tier contender by then. The Los Angeles Kings, they'll probably be below average or entering a rebuild. They're just in a really weird spot because you got Doughty and Kopitar so old. Kopitar retiring after the season. Then you got a bunch of guys in like their late 20s, like Kevin Fiala, Adrian Kempe. And then like you have that next gen in Brandt Clark and Quinn Byfield. But after that, there's really not much. So I think there's going to be like a mediocre 80 to 90 point team for the foreseeable future. Maybe they can make the playoffs, but I think especially by then, even when a Fiala and Kempe are out of their primes, it's not going to be looking too good for the Los Angeles Kings. The Boston Bruins, I'm going with deep in a rebuild. Pasternak's 29 years old right now. Swayman's 26. McAvoy's 26 or 27 as well. Like, their big 3 right now are in their prime. They'll be out of their prime in 5 years from now. Do you think that the young core, James Higgins isn't exactly carrying it up at the college level? I think the next 2 years they'll be a competitive team, but I think they are going to have to enter some kind of rebuild at some point. Now, historically, the Boston Bruins have always found a way to somehow get some insane talent outside of the top 10 and extend their window. But logically speaking, right now, when you look, they have an okay prospect pool. They don't have some amazing prospect pool where I think once Pasta starts to regress and he's no longer a guy that can put up 110 points and carry your forward core, you're probably going to have to enter a rebuild. The Columbus Blue Jackets, in between battling for a playoff spot and safe playoff team. I feel like I might put too many teams in these top tiers, so I'm going to go with battling for a playoff spot, probably a wild card team. I like their young pieces. I don't love their young pieces. Zach Werenski is like going to turn 29 this year. He's not that young anymore, so in 5 years from now, he'll be 34 years old. It's really going to come down to guys like Caden Lindstrom. Can he get back on track after a pretty rocky 18 months after getting drafted, a lot to do with injuries? Denton Mateychuk or Jackson Smith, can those guys emerge into a number 1 defenseman? Just a decent amount of question marks to the Columbus Blue Jackets. But again, way closer to safe playoff team than below average or entering yet another rebuild. The New York Rangers, they'll find a way to probably sign someone in like 2028 and 2029 and stay somewhat competitive, but they should enter a rebuild once Fox and Shesterkin start to fall out of their prime. Actually, I'll put them in below average because I think Shesterkin, 29, Fox, 27. Like 5 years from now, those guys will still be on the team unless Perreault really hits it. I don't think that they're going to be that good of a team in 5 years. And I think New York Ranger fans at this point would be pretty accepting of a rebuild in 5 years if nothing really changes. Chicago, it's in between safe playoff team and top tier contender. I think if you told me 2033, 2034, I would definitely have them in top tier contender. If we're talking about tops, I'm going to put in safe playoff team right now. Again, they're building a very, very solid squad. Still a lot of young guys, still a lot of uncertain guys. We'll see how Anton Frundell continues to trend. Connor Bedard looks like he is yet again on superstar top 5 in the NHL kind of trajectory, but there still are some question marks with this young core. Spencer Knight has answered a question mark in terms of in net. Again, closer to top tier contenders, and maybe I will end up moving them. Relax. The Carolina Hurricanes, they'll probably still be a top. Actually, it's tough. Again, we talked about it in the rebuild video. Do they have that one superstar that can eventually get them to win a Stanley Cup? But when you look at their team, man, they have a very good. They still have like a top 8 to 12 prospect pool right now. And on the roster, you got Nikishin, who's still young, Seth Jarvis, Jackson Blake, Logan Stankoven. So although guys like Slavin and Aho will be out of their prime, they're just going to find a way to yet again be a top tier team. Like they just run it. They run a great ship over there in Carolina. The Seattle Kraken, I just think that they're kind of like perpetually stuck in below average, if that makes sense. And even this year, they started off pretty strong. They're not going to end up getting a high pick most likely. So as guys like Dunn and McCann kind of start to age out, you're going to have Berkeley Cat and Shane Wright emerge. But I don't think that that's just going to be enough in the NHL. And I think they're just going to stay in that 75 to 90 point range as of right now. They're in a tough situation right now. The Ottawa Senators, I'm going to go with safe playoff team. You could maybe convince me on top tier contender, much like a Chicago. I'm not being biased. I put my Ottawa Senators in safe playoff. You'll have guys like Sanderson and Stützle in their prime. Will Merrilainen emerge as the future franchise goaltender, or will they have to go out and trade for someone like they did with Linus Ullmark? That's a big question mark. But yeah, they made the playoffs last year. They're still very, very young. And in 5 years, none of their core pieces will really be, I guess, like Thomas Chabot, but I don't even consider him that much of a core piece right now, would be like regressing into their early 30s. So I think I'm going to go with safe playoff team. The Philadelphia Flyers, interesting, man. This season might be make or break for the Philadelphia Flyers in terms of will they get another elite prospect? Because Porter Martone killing it at Michigan State right now. And I think come the early 2030s, hopefully they should be a safe playoff team. But 2030, 2031, they might be battling for a playoff spot. Again, I feel like people are going to think that I'm too hard on this team when you see all these other teams that are going to be top tier contenders and safe playoff teams. Someone has to miss playoffs. Someone has to be battling for a wild card spot. Like there's just a lot of young talent right now in the NHL. The Detroit Red Wings, they're also in a tough spot because, yeah, they have a very exciting young prospect pool. Raymond and Sider look like they are their franchise defenseman and franchise winger. The only problem is in 5 years, Larkin and DeBrincat will kind of be aging out, will be in their early 30s. They'll still be effective players, so I think I'm going to put them in safe playoff teams, but they're going to need guys like Marco Kasper to take huge steps. Simon Edvinsson, Axel Sandin-Pellikka needs to be better at the NHL level, and I think that goalie tandem would be very beneficial in terms of being a safe playoff team. If Kosa and Augustine really hit in 5 years from now in their mid-20s, they're going to have one of the best goalie tandems in the NHL. The Vancouver Canucks, it's crazy to say deep rebuild, assume that Quinn Hughes might end up leaving. Maybe they'll be entering a rebuild at that point, but I got to throw someone in the rebuild. And right now, they haven't started off horrible this season, but I'm just not very bullish on the Vancouver Canucks. The St. Louis Blues, talked about this in the rebuild video. They're retooling. They've done good things. But do you think in 5 years that Snuggerud's going to be a 45, 50 goal guy? Do you think Adam Jiricek's going to turn into their franchise defenseman? I just don't have the most faith in this compared to some of these other teams that fully tore it down and fully rebuilt. Go watch that video where I think I got to put them in like below average, or maybe finally admitting that it's time for a full teardown and a rebuild. The New Jersey Devils, safe playoff team. When looking at it, Jack Hughes is still 24 years old. Heischer's only 26 years old. Luke Hughes is still very young. Simone Nemec. Dawson Mercer has really bounced back. Some of their other pieces, like hopefully Yegorov, that might be the key to this if they were going to be a top-tier contender. Actually, I'm going to put them in top-tier contender because I do like Yegorov a decent amount. I think he's going to be the successor to Jacob Markstrom after his contract is up. So, yeah, I think the New Jersey Devils, Dougie Hamilton will be off the team, but he's like already pretty old and regressing a decent amount. Like they're going to have to plug things in terms of defense core and forward depth, but I think they're going to be able to do that. San Jose Sharks, you got to have them in top tier contender considering they have the best prospect pool in the NHL right now, maybe the most promising young guy in the NHL, as well as Will Smith, Eklund, proven at the NHL level, Michael Misa. Yeah, I think top tier contender for the Sharks. Montreal, also top tier contender. Last year made the playoffs well ahead of schedule. Lane Hudson, Demidov, Caulfield will still be in his prime. Suzuki will still be in his prime. This team is absolutely set, and most of their core pieces are between the ages of 19 to 26 right now. Washington, I'm going to go with battling for the playoffs. Again, like I talked about in the rebuild video, like if Hudson and Leonard really, really hit for them, yeah, they'll be a safe playoff team. I'm just not sure if they're going to have the star power to be a top tier contender. Nashville, hopefully Nashville enters a rebuild in the next year or two, and then they're coming out of it. They're exiting a rebuild. Maybe I should put entering/exiting a rebuild, and hopefully that's where Nashville is. They have a couple of potential franchise pieces, as well as Brady Martin entering his prime. But yeah, I don't think in 2030, 2031, they're going to be anything special. Tampa, maybe they find a way to extend their window somehow, but when you look at it, Kucherov's like 32, Vasilevsky's 31, Gensel's 31, Hedman and McDonough are 35 and 36. So they're going to have to enter a rebuild. They'll be in a really good spot if they could trade Braden Point, Gensel, and Hagel. They'll be set in terms of a rebuild. Become the 2030, 2031 season, I think a rebuild is probably going to happen. The Minnesota Wild, I'm going to go safe playoff team. Kaprizov still will only be, 32, 33. Guys like Boehm and Faber will be really, really in their prime. They still have a pretty strong prospect pool. Matthew Boldy's only 24 years old. So they should be a playoff team. Although this season has not started off ideally, they are starting to get back on track, and I still think that they're going to find a way to be a safe playoff team. The Utah Mammoth, when looking at them, I think you got to go with top tier contender. They have slowed down a little bit to start this season, but still such a young, fun team. That kid line of Peterka, Gunther, and Cooley. Keller and Schmaltz will still only be like 32 and 33 years old. They're not even that old. Barrett Hayden will be 30 years old, as well as Caleb Desnoyers, Boot, Simashev hopefully continues to progress and becomes a top pair defenseman. Sergachev won't be too old. Yeah, they'll be set. Hrabal in net hopefully will emerge as the starter. They're going to be a top-tier contender. Very impressed with what Utah is building. My New York Islanders, again, it just depends what route they go down. If they decide we're going to stink the next 1 to 2 years, yeah, they'll be below average, maybe battling for a playoff spot. I just cannot confidently say that all of their prospects are going to hit and they're going to be a safe playoff team at this point. But yeah, they do have that one future superstar. Can you surround him? That is the question. Ideally for me, stink for a season or two, and then your window kind of opens up like 2031, 2032. So not quite November of 2030. Actually, that would be that season, but you know what I mean. Dallas Stars still should be a safe playoff team. A lot of their guys will be falling out of their primes, though. Rantanen's 28. The 2017 guys will be 31, 32 years old. Unless Wyatt Johnson really becomes a superstar, yeah, they'll no longer probably be a top-tier contender. Toronto Maple Leafs, battling for a playoff spot. I mean, Austin Matthews has dealt with a lot of injuries. I'm not confident that he's going to age amazingly, and the rest of the team is just pretty old. William Nylander's 2 years older than Austin Matthews. Morgan Riley's 2 years older than William Nylander. Joseph Woll, if he continues to progress, becomes a legit starter. But even he's 26 years old. Yeah, they need Easton Cowan to become an elite first liner, and Matthew Nyes to continue to progress to be definitely to be a top tier contender, maybe even a safe playoff team. Buffalo, I hate to be a dick, but I think that soon Thompson and Dahlin are just going to want out. At some point in their mid to late 20s, they're just going to be enough of this. We gave you plenty of seasons. It wasn't us. We were not the reason why we missed the playoffs all these goddamn years, and I think they could eventually want out. The Edmonton Oilers, same thing goes with Colorado as Edmonton, but there's a chance that McDavid just isn't there, so I'll throw them in battling for the playoffs. And also, Edmonton's surrounding core is even older than the Colorado Avalanche. When looking at Hyman, when looking at Ekholm, when looking at RNH, they're a pretty old team. Yes, they got Howard. Yes, they got Savoy. And Bouchard's only 25. But yeah, again, closer to the safe playoff team than battling for a playoff spot. But 5 years from now, with the possibility of McDavid leaving, I don't think McCarr's going to leave Colorado. I think I got to throw them there. Florida probably will find a way to still be a safe playoff team. Basically, their entire core will be in their early 30s outside of Samoskevich and Lundell. But I mean, they're Florida. They'll probably have 4 Stanley Cups by then. The Pittsburgh Penguins, I'm going to go below out. It's so weird because now that they're starting out so good, I thought that this is the year that they enter the rebuild and then they'll be coming out of it by 2030, 2031. But now I don't really know. I'm going to still go below average. Again, that should be entering/exiting a rebuild. I think that's where they'd be. Vegas, again, similarly to Florida, but even more, they'll probably find a way to still be fucking good, and it'll be insufferable. Traditional logic would say their entire core, for the most part, is between the ages of 28 to 33. they should be rebuilding in 5 years. But they'll find a way to sign some superstar that's 26 years old or trade for him, and they'll probably still be I can't put them in a safe playoff team because I have too many teams up there, but I'll put them in battling for a playoff spot. And then Winnipeg, I'm not sure if they're gonna ever accept a rebuild just because they're in such a small market. But yeah, Kyle Connor's Dylan Sandberg's the youngest guy of that core. I talked about it on the podcast with Alyssa. Dylan Sandberg at 26 is they're young. Besides Cole Perfetti, who's actually pretty young, but their entire core is between the ages of 26 to 32 at this point. So in 5 years, at some point, Hellebuck needs to slow down in the regular season. At some point, Mark Scheifele can't keep up putting out monster seasons. They're eventually going to fall off. And I think by we were saying in 3 years, maybe, but in 5 years, definitely should happen for the Winnipeg Jets. But let me know in the comments. What do you think? So we got 6 teams in contender. I think that's fair. Again, maybe move up Chicago, maybe. And again, by safe playoff team, you could win the Stanley Cup. I'm not saying it's limited. They have no shot if they're in this tier. But yeah, let me know. Look at me showing love to Detroit Red Wings. Let me know in the comments. What do you think about this? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.